I saw from your email that you're struggling with some emotional eating and looking for some support with that. Okay. Okay. Ooh, how does it feel to share your story and open up about these things? Yeah. Mm, sure. That's that's kind of how we work. So yeah, I'm glad you're here. That's certainly my wheelhouse as far as helping to navigate these things that you've talked about. I'm hearing the pattern with food and mood, and maybe there's some self-soothing, getting through stressful tasks or tasks that they get kind of monotonous, which is really common. And I think that the way that we're taught to think about it often is like try harder, be smart about it, plan ahead, these kinds of things, which there's some value to those things. But if we're in a fight or flight response, if our nervous system's already activated and we're functioning from our limbic system, then it doesn't really matter how much you know about it, because our brain and our bodies are reacting. We're not functioning from the same place. And so the process that I like to support folks with is really understanding the inner workings of when stress is activated in a certain way, then food plays out in a certain way. And it's not really like being smart enough to outsmart it. It's more of deconstructing it and reverse engineering it. That way, when we're there, we know how to work with it instead of just feeling like we didn't try hard enough or we just failed. Um, and so it's more like bottom up, a lot of like what's the body and nervous system experiencing before we try to logic our way through it. Okay. So I do come to it with a health at every size approach, which means that I'm not going to focus on a certain weight goal with you. I'm not going to try to pinpoint an ideal weight with you. I don't ask you to weigh yourself or count calories or even track food. The approach is a lot more behavioral focused. So it's a lot more of noticing what the patterns are, getting to know why they play out the way they do, healing what needs to be healed. And sometimes that occurs in our sessions, sometimes that occurs with your therapist. And then from there, we can start to rebuild like what are the skills that are really going to reset things so that you can have a different dynamic with food. What are you noticing as I'm talking through this different approach? Okay. Yeah, it is a different approach. And I think one of the appealing things about the more logical approach or like counting calories, counting macros is that as long as we get to stay in this really logical, like make a list, do the thing kind of place, then it takes the emotion out of it. It's more black and white. It's more straightforward. And yeah, it can get frustrating at times, but oftentimes it's like it's cut and dried, and that's kind of nice. This approach is a lot more dipping into the emotion. It's a lot more looking at, okay, what does this touch into? Could it be that there's something there that needs to be healed? And then from there, once we rebuild a new foundation, then the things can start to shift. And it's more of a relationship with your body. So, it may be that at times we do some like visualization. If you were in my office, if you were sitting there and it was you in one chair and food was sitting there with you, and what would that be like? And that's sometimes the dynamic of our conversations is noticing like not just what does this food do in your body, like how can I help you get more protein? Yes, we can do that, but it's also like let's look closer at this relationship, get to know what the patterns are, and really shifting this idea so that like the mainstream diet approach or even the mainstream like medical approach with nutrition and wellness and health is more of like here's the list of things you need to know, now go do them. And it's a lot of like I compare it a lot to like old school parenting is like do it right, here's how you do it, and if you don't do it you get in trouble. And that's kind of what dieting feels like. Okay, I did it wrong, shame on me. And this version is a lot more like compassionate parenting or gentle parenting, where it's like, hey, this is hard for you. Let's understand why. And then I want to help you to be able to be successful doing it differently. A lot of time we kick it off with once a week, and then we check in about 3 sessions and see, like, okay, does it feel like the foundation's here? We can switch to every other week. A lot of times with people being busy, every other week is plenty.